Hello viewer, welcome to Power Wheel, brought to you by the Transmission Company of Nigeria, TCN. Federal government pledges support to West African regional electricity markets. TCN says spinning reserve ancillary services to improve power grid stability. Federal government on track to flag off Mambila hydropower project in Taraba State. On the interview segment, the Managing Director and CEO of the Transmission Company of Nigeria, TCN, Mr. Eugene Mohammed, speaks about how the provision of ancillary services, including spinning reserve and a robust supervisory control and data acquisition, SCADA, could help Nigeria to develop a stable power grid. Stay with us for details of these and other reports. My name is Chinwenwa Anyaung. The management of the Transmission Company of Nigeria, TCN, says having a sustained spinning reserve and other ancillary services will help to improve the stability of the national power grid.
The market operator at TCN, Engineer Edmond AJ, stated this during a presentation on ancillary services at a public hearing in Abuja, organized for the extraordinary tariff review of TCN by the Nigerian Electricity Regulatory Commission, NEC. AJ said the provision of the procured spinning reserve will be reviewed every 6 months and will take into consideration the progress it has made in the power grid stability.
It is a continuum. Once there is a system disturbance, it has to be restored before any other thing. For voltage support or any other ancillary services, anything that is required to keep the system stable, of course, we will not look away from it.
The chairman of the 3-man tariff review panel and vice chairman of NEC, Engineer Sanusi Garba, said the hearing was to allow stakeholders understand the objectives of providing the spinning reserve.
We hope that the revised solution will provide the meat of what is to be discussed and interrogated by all the stakeholders, not only discos, generators and so on, but even consumers who eventually will be responsible for paying for this.
The Managing Director and Chief Executive Officer of TCN, Mr. Eugene Mohammed, said the request the company was making for the provision of spinning reserve on the national power grid was to complement the primary reserve for an improved system stability.
The primary reserve will actually kickstart the spinning reserve to start prepared to be ready to come on board. And as we speak with you, Honorable Chairman, we know that we need to put in place certain things to ensure that this spinning reserve work.
Mohammed assured the stakeholders that TCN will adequately deploy the spinning reserve for the overall success of the Nigerian electricity grid and supply to consumers. The TCN MD, Mr. Mohammed, however, clarified that Gencos were not providing the spinning reserve in the past because they were not driven by any incentive for the additional tax.
The Gencos were not providing spinning reserve because the incentive that was provided for spinning reserve was not adequate. So that was how they recommended what they think should be the incentive for provision of spinning reserve, which we forwarded to NAC sometime in 2017. And when we sent to NAC, NAC responded that we should go for competitive procurement of spinning reserve.
Concluding on the public hearing, the NEC Vice Chairman, Engineer Sanusi Garba, said the Commission will harmonize all existing power purchase agreement, PPA, and ancillary services agreement, ASA.
I think the summary is that the need for spinning reserve is not in doubt. Some of the contributions clearly highlight the need for us to ensure that there's no double payment to any market participant, and therefore would like to harmonize what is in the PPAs and what is in the ASAs and so on to make sure that if a market participant provides a service, then obviously it's just paid for that service.
Today's interview session is with the Managing Director and CEO of the Transmission Company of Nigeria, Mr. Yuji Mohammed. He spoke shortly after the public hearing on the competitive procurement of Spinning Reserve at the headquarters of the Nigerian Electricity Regulatory Commission, NERC, in Abuja. Mr. Mohammed speaks about how the provision of ancillary services, including Spinning Reserve, and a robust supervisory control and data acquisition SCADA could help Nigeria to develop a stable power grid. Stay with us. You clearly had a lot to say during the NERC hearing. What exactly were the issues you wanted to clarify?
I did make some clarification at this meeting. There was a report last week that indicated that TCN submitted case for extraordinary tariff review and it was turned down by NAC. That is not a correct position. We didn't submit case for extraordinary tariff review. What we requested for is a provision for spinning reserve. Provision for auxiliary service. Auxiliary services are services that are supposed to be provided by the market to ensure that we have a stable grid. One of them is what we call secondary reserve. The secondary reserve also has another name called spinning reserve. That secondary reserve is supposed to take care of instability that cannot be taken care of by the primary reserve. The primary reserve is a frequency control, which you are aware. We fought very, very hard to ensure that Nigeria have primary reserve. Before we came in TCN, there was no primary reserve. Primary reserve is one to take care of the demand and supply so that all generators that are connected to the grid in line with the grid code, they provide they put their machine on what is called free governor mode. As of today, I'm happy to tell you that apart from 3 small generators on the grid, which we have written letter to them and we have informed them that they are due for disconnection, all generators are on free governor in Nigeria, which is a significant achievement. Now, the next thing we need to have is the secondary reserve. The secondary reserve is to take care of instability that cannot be taken care of by the primary reserve. And what are these instability? If, for example, a generator that is carrying 300 megawatt, for example, goes off, or 2 of them, or a transmission line that is carrying huge power, let's say 400 megawatt, tripped. Maybe there is a fire, it's a bushfire, and it trips. The secondary reserve is supposed to come up to support the grid so that the demand and supply is balanced. And that is what we have come to request for here. Now, we are not requesting for it for TCN, it's for the industry. Because when there is a system collapse, is it only TCN that lost? No, everybody loses. And it brings a lot of strain on even TCN equipment, on distribution equipment, and on generation equipment. So it is the industry request. The reason why we are making the request is because we are the one operating the grid. Otherwise, it's for everybody. And we have made adequate clarification to all the stakeholders. And you have seen, at least with the pocket of 1 or 2 ignorance that we had to clarify, the general consensus is that most of them have understood what we are requesting for. And it's not a revenue for TCN. It's actually a service that is supposed to be provided, that is supposed to be paid, so that it will help further stabilize the grid.
You would agree that if there is an increase in the tariff, the final consumers would be affected. Do you share this view?
Of course, they are the one to pay for it. But the fact is that if you are paying for service for improving the quality of that service, I think it is most important. And we have to understand that this is a standard all over the world. All over the world is a standard. If you want to have a stable grid, you want Nigeria to be like any other country. Like when you go to Europe, you find that their light doesn't go off. You go to America, their light doesn't go off. You go to Ghana, you see less instability. It's because they have done the right thing. And these are some of the right things that they need to do. And one of the things that we also want you to support is this issue of SCADA. You have heard what I said. Most of the stakeholders in the market see SCADA as if it is a TCN thing. It is not. It's a service that is also going to help us to further stabilize the grid. For example, we are talking about if a generator goes out. If it goes out, the spinning reserve is supposed to come and stabilize the grid. But is it supposed to go out? No. Any generator that goes out that is not within the planned maintenance that they have submitted to NCC, that NCC has approved, that generator is supposed to be penalized. But how do you penalize them? You only penalize them if you can see them. The only way you can see them is for the register of event, which is to be in place and which is the SCADA, and why we are calling all the stakeholders in the power sector the most support for us to have a functional SCADA. Otherwise, we cannot operate the grid efficiently like other countries' grid are operated.
TCN has competitively procured spinning reserve from 6 GENCOs. Are they capable of delivering that?
The 6 GENCOs, I think, include some hydros. I think the contracted generators like Azura and Odupani are also part of them. But what I want to tell you is that all those generators, we have tested them and we have seen they are capable of providing the service. The only challenge we have as of today is the fact that since we don't have a SCADA, some of them, the current SCADA can see them, but some of them, the current SCADA cannot see them. How do we put in the mechanism that we can be able to monitor what they are providing? Don't forget that the spinning reserve is not only because your generation was 10 megawatt and you have increased it by 20, and that means the 20 you have increased has become spinning reserve. It's not like that. It has to respond to the frequency changes. So did your generation, even though we have contracted you, did you increase that generation according to the contract in line with the changes of the frequency? Because it means that if the frequency dip, because we have lost a significant load, your generation is supposed to respond to that. Did he respond to that? And that's why I said that Shola, who is the head of system planning of NCC, is not here with us. He's already in those stations, some of those stations, together with other engineers that we set up committee to find out how can we monitor this. If we are not sure that we can monitor it, we are not going to deploy it.
Will this spinning reserve address load rejection by discos?
Yeah, the load rejection, I think NAC is addressing this. NAC has already done an order that is mandating discos that they are going to pay for capacity. So this is going to address that problem. Very soon you will see that this load rejection is going to be a thing of the past, because the load rejection actually is because the discos can drop load and increase load at will, and they are not penalized for anything. But now that NAC is putting this structure to ensure that there is capacity charge for those that refuse to take load, I think that very soon you will see that this load rejection is going to be a thing of the past.
That was an informative interview session on the impact of having a robust spinning reserve in the power system, as well as other auxiliary services. Join us next time for another exciting interview segment of this program. Let's take a break for a message. We'll be right back.
Do not build under transmission power lines for your safety and health. Electricity power lines and substations, either for power transmission or power distribution services, are extremely dangerous when exposed to direct human contact. These power lines and substations transmit electricity that lights up our homes and offices, power our computers, TVs, and refrigerators. On the other hand, the same electricity when exposed is extremely dangerous. It can shock, electrocute, and kill anyone on its way. That is why everyone must adopt safety measures whenever we use or are close to electricity facilities like power lines or substation or transformers. For the safety of the people and animals, governments all over the world have approved way leave or right of way of 50 meters for 330 kV power lines and 30 meters for 132 kV power lines, and for 33 kV lines the way leave is 15 meters. People are not expected to be found within this way leave or right of way for safety reasons. The lines can suddenly cut and fall to the ground with very disastrous consequences such as fire and electrocution of anybody and destruction of anything, be it vehicle, houses or vegetation on its line. It has also been established that power lines and substation emit electromagnetic fields, EMF, which is dangerous to human health. The World Health Organization, WHO, has warned that people who spend long hours under or close high-tension lines stand the risk of being affected by EMF and be vulnerable to cancer, leukemia in children, miscarriages among pregnant women, and other terrible diseases. It is therefore advisable not to build any structure or operate any business under or near any electricity high-tension lines or substations. TCN wants you to stay alive, stay safe, stay healthy, avoid power lines. This message is from the management of Transmission Company of Nigeria, TCN.
Thanks for staying with us. The Project Delivery Committee on the construction of the Mambila hydropower plant says it is hopeful that the project will be flagged off soon, as federal government was doing its best to conclude all arrangements for the takeoff.
The chairman of the Project Delivery Committee and director of Renewable Energy and Rural Power Assets in the Federal Ministry of Power, Engineer Farouk Yabo, said this during a visit with the members of the committee to the proposed site of the Mambila Plateau in Taraba State.
This is just to express the sincere commitment of the leadership of this country in the implementation of the Mambila hydropower projects. We are already here in Ungo confluence of rivers or the dams from Nia and Sumsong. So we're just trying to understand the topography of the area and match it with what we have been handed over to in files, so that we know exactly what kind of tax is in front of us.
Yabo, who spoke on behalf of the other committee members, said it was the first time the team will visit the project site to assess the topography, which he said was adequate for project delivery.
Most projects have been delivered. I have the opportunity of visiting a number of similar facilities all across the world, from Asia to Europe to the Middle East, particularly in Israel, where we visited some years back a similar kind of facility, mainly powering solar, using solar to power lifting of water upstairs. So I think this is another big challenge that we are faced with, and I believe we are going to be able to handle it.
The Project Delivery Committee head further assured Nigerians of the members' commitment to working towards the implementation of the project.
In the coming days, we will be sending surveyors and enumerators, that is following immediately after the flag up of the sensitization, which took place just a few days back in Abuja. Another one will be taking place, and then subsequently the surveyors, evaluators will all be here. And in the next 6 months, we believe we will be in a position to reach financial close on this project, and also to have some kind of access, legal access into these lands to start the construction.
Yabo said the sensitization program, which will hold after the site inspection, is meant for all residents of the communities where the project will be sited. A resident of the Mambila project dam site, Salihu Basari, was elated about seeing the officials, as he said it was the first sign to show that the federal government was committed to delivering the project.
I'm really happy today. This committee, the Buhari, sent them to come and see this dam. I thank God. By the grace of God, I will benefit it. My children can benefit it. We thank God. I know that since you are telling us this dam, up to today, I'm really happy.
The federal government says it is committed to supporting participants in the West African regional electricity market to increase access to power in sub-Saharan Africa.
The permanent secretary in the Ministry of Power, Mrs. Didi Walson-Jack, disclosed this when she received a delegation of representatives of some power firms from Nigeria, Togo, and Benin Republic, led by the Managing Director of the Transmission Company of Nigeria, TCN, Mr. Yuji Muhammad.
Indeed, we will have time to meet later on so that we can know more about your work and your challenges, and we are happy to have you here, and I wish you all a very fruitful meeting.
Walson-Jack was hopeful that the meeting of the participants in the regional electricity market will add value to access to electricity in the respective countries.
I'm very happy to meet you all, and I do pray that your meeting will be fruitful. It will add value to what we are doing here in Nigeria and in your different countries.
The managing director of TCN, Mr. Mohammed, introduced the representatives of some power firms in Nigeria, Togo, and Benin Republic to the permanent secretary, as he noted that they had come for a meeting at TCN but found it important to visit the ministry. Briefing the permanent secretary, Mohammed, who is also the chairman executive board of the West African Power Pool, WAP, explained the objectives of the regional electricity market in West Africa. He said the previous pattern for trading electricity between Nigeria and neighboring countries was through government relations, but that was changing with the regional electricity trading that the WAP, led by Nigeria, was pushing.
West African Power Pool also, and ECOWAS generally, have also decided that all countries in West Africa can trade electricity among themselves. And that's how they created the West African Power Pool, which Nigeria is the key player in creating the West African Power Pool.
The WAP chairman also said after the launch of the West African Regional Electricity Market in 2018, all previous agreements on energy trade is transiting to a bilateral trade for Benin Republic and Togo, and their distribution companies, DISCOs, will now buy power from Nigeria, while their governments are clearing the previous debts.
That was why we taxed them that, okay, before we do the transition, you have to pay us all the money you are owing us.
The market operator at TCN, Engineer Edmond AJ, on the sideline of the meeting, addressed the press on the objectives of the regional market trades meeting, which held at the TCN corporate headquarters in Abuja.
We are having a meeting that is going to deal with issues on how energy flows from Nigeria to our neighboring countries that have entered into a bilateral agreement with some of our generating companies. We have one common interface at Ikeja West in Lagos. Ikeja West has a 330 kV line running from Ikeja West to Sakete, which is the border town in Benin Republic. At Ikeja West, we have one Itron meter. This meter has the capability of taking all the energy going out because the line has the capability of taking about 800 megawatts. But the issue now is how do we separate the energy sold by each of the generating stations in Nigeria into Sakete.
AJ also noted that at the meeting, the participants will discuss issues bordering on losses of transmission line while evacuating power to the international customers from Nigeria to Sakete town in Benin Republic.
So those are the issues we want to discuss. Agreement has been signed between Paras generating station in Lagos, Udukbani, which is belonging to NDPAC, supplying CEET, and potentially Transco Power will also supply energy to one of those countries. So we now want to discuss how we will separate these energies, mainly at Sakete substation. That's why we're here.
It's time for reports in the Power Flash segment. Please stay with us. That is it on this edition of Power Wheel. Do join us next week for another refreshing edition. This episode and the previous ones are available on our YouTube channel. You can also interact with us on these other platforms as we strive to serve you better. I am Chiwenwa Anyao. Enjoy the rest of your day.